our next speaker, Imam Tahir, will also be speaking about. Upon completing his religious studies in India, he's been serving as the Imam of the SABA Islamic Association since 2001. He's also the head of the Islamic school there, Granada Islamic School, an institution which is now in its 26th year, and is frequently a speaker at interfaith events like this. Please welcome him up with a loud round of applause.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, everyone. It gives me a great pleasure and honor to be here for a number of reasons, particularly because of the interesting times that we happen to be living in and the kind of statements that we are hearing from our leaders. I'm reminded, and I spoke about this a few days ago, in this extremely difficult time, yet very important weekend, in which we celebrate and commemorate the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm reminded of the final sermon of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Peace and blessings of God be upon him. After living, I just happened to be in the city of the Prophet a few days ago, and the blessed city of Mecca a few days ago. And having been a frequent visitor there, there's always something new that you learn. And this time round, I asked a close friend of mine from Houston, who has lived in Medina Munawwara for the last decade or so, and he's actually known to know a lot of the sites, because historically, the compound of the mosque and the mosque as it stands today was the entire city of Medina Munawwara during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so I shared with him and I asked him, I said, I need to help me do a little walking tour of this site and explain to me, how the Prophet lived and how he interacted with his neighbors. And in doing so, he took me to a few places in the mosque that he knew where certain historical events took place. He took me outside the mosque where there happened to be, and it still exists today, the actual marketplace during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as we were discussing some of these things, one of the things that really stood out for me as we walked around, because we did this after Isha, it was late at night, not a lot of people. As we were walking around the city of the Prophet, one thing that was made very clear to me was the fact that when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, migrated to Medina Munawwara, and he found safety in a land that was generally a land in which they were immigrants, and later on became residents. One of the first things that the Prophet Muhammad did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was that he began to interact with the locals, many of whom happened to be Muslims, and of course many of them who happened to be primarily of the Jewish faith. And he gained an understanding with them. He understood the people, he understood the culture, and he collectively, with the locals of that city, worked to make that city and the cities and the villages around it a place that was safe and sacred for everyone that lived there. Right? A lot of us who've been to the Prophet's city will go to sites like Masjid Qiblatain, Masjid Quba, and so on and so forth. And we're driving through the city in taxis or buses, not realizing that these were actually small villages outside the mosque, outside the city of Medina. These were not incorporated into the city. These were small villages that he, peace be upon him, used to visit. And he collected, the people of these little villages, by the way, were not Muslims. But he would go to these villages to interact with individuals and share what he had about his faith and work with the locals in order to make the streets on the way there, the neighborhoods, the places, a safe place. and taught his community to stand up for their rights. Right? Stand up for their rights and stand up for the rights of every indigenous individual who was being wronged. That's why the Muslim history is filled with examples of places where Muslims signed treaties with other tribes and individuals in order to ensure that not only would they protect Islam and Muslims in times of difficulty, but the Muslims would defend them as well, regardless of their faith background. That when we talk about the final sermon of the Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we're reminded that the Prophet talked about social justice. The entire final sermon, which by the way is a very short sermon, not a long sermon to begin with, but the Prophet talked about social justice. The Prophet talked about economic justice, right? The Prophet talked about justice within the family. You know, we're a people who are continuously reminded that we don't treat our women fairly, and I agree that there are many Muslims who don't treat women fairly. But if you actually go to the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Prophet in his final sermon, which is considered to be so powerful in our tradition, very clearly talks about looking after the rights of women. Right? That's the Prophet that represents me. That's the Prophet when I'm asked to love and express my love to is the one that I express my love to. The Prophet talked about social justice in his final sermon, ensuring that everyone received their rights, the young, the old. Right? And we are reminded that in that sermon, in that final sermon of his, the Prophet made it very clear that we worship the one Lord. He made it very clear that no individual has a priority over another based on the color of their skin. Right? No one was better than the other except in their consciousness to God Almighty. Illa bit-taqwa. Right? And the taqwa, right, our consciousness and our being cognizant of God is something that God alone judges and no one else is able to judge. That's the tradition that I come from. Right? That's the tradition that we are reminded to be cognizant of. That when we look around in the room, I happen to be, it was a very beautiful journey for me, but one of the things that came up, I happen to be on this journey with a retired professional football player, for the football fans in the room. He happened to play on the Broncos and the Colts some years ago, and we were there together. And as we sat in the mosque in Mecca, one morning at Fajr, we were talking, and I said, listen, the diversity that you see here is something that you take for granted because you are a Muslim that comes from the United States of America. And most mosques in America are extremely diverse. We have people of different colors, different backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different food, clothing backgrounds that attend the same institution, and we call it our home. But for the vast majority of the people that happen to be here, this is extremely foreign. They haven't seen another Muslim of a different color, of a different language, because of the lands that they come from. They actually haven't had that opportunity. And as Muslims in America, we have this beautiful opportunity in order to be able to interact with each other. That is what makes our communities so beautiful and so rich. Right? That's what makes our communities stand out. And that's why when Muslim communities in America say that we can lead the way, I truly believe that we can actually lead the way for Muslims around the world. Because we have this diversity. Let's be real. This happens to be a Shia institution. I happen to be of the Sunni background. But believe it or not, I have been here so many times that I don't need to plug in the address on my navigation anymore. Well, the only reason I do it on Waze is to find out where the cops are, but that's about it. But other than that, I know where Fortran Court is. That when I walk into this building, I know where the entrance is. When I walk into this building, the vast majority of people here know who I am, and I've met them before. These are my brothers and sisters in faith. And I truly believe that. And all of you that have been to my masjid I would hope and feel that we make you feel exactly the same. That's the beautiful tradition that what we are a part of. And I would hope and pray that collectively as Muslims, as citizens of this beautiful city and this county and this country, we would take and share that love and share it with everyone that is around us. And whether it is reciprocated or not, our tradition continues and reminds us to be loving with everyone at all times. Because that is what our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did. And despite anything and everything that happens, that 3 very long years that we have, maybe 7, you never know. But with that said, now let's be real. But with that said, we will continue to be on our highest moral character because that's who we are and that's the faith that we represent. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.